Show number 200, folks. Here it is. Look at this.
Oh,
With
that's right.
Logan
Jason's
Robinson.
working.
Yeah, big games here. We're going to do it upright tonight here at the Voice of College Football. 6 Eastern is the time to be here. And we'll take your comments and questions for the next 60. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing phenomenal. We don't have Jason here for the 200th show. I mean, maybe this was written in advance, but he is having a really big interview right now with the head man of Florida State football with Mike Norvell. At the moment, he couldn't get it hooked up to where we're talking with Mike on here. Couldn't do that. So I guess we're going to have to wait till we get closer to spring camp or James gets an interview from the Jacksonville side of things. But he's got a big interview, and sadly he can't celebrate with us tonight. But 200th episode, it's crazy how quickly it's flied. We've been through the ups and downs, and now I wanted to bring up to Jason his guy Willie Taggart heading to the NFL to be a running backs coach. I thought we'd pop the champagne and everything, but Jason isn't here, so maybe we'll do that next week. But he's also a Baltimore Ravens fan, so it just works out magically for Jason. We won't hear enough of it for the next year until Willie Taggart's let go.
Well, no, I'm
Baltimore.
I'm going to let Jason know, hey, no celebrations next week. He missed his chance. He's going to have to wait for Willie to get fired and get another job before we celebrate the next one. So
yeah. Hey, I'm celebrating. I'm a Steelers fan, so congratulations, Ravens and Willie Taggart, and looking forward to it. And that was one of the biggest threats from the Ravens is their running back room, and I'm just happy for the future for my guys in Harbaugh.
James, what do you got going on these days?
I'm just trying to negotiate deals and trying to cover all these sports. I've got the combine coming up next week. I got a chance to go sit in on a workout with Anthony Richardson. So, I guess that isn't really. If you're an NFL fan, I guess you care. If you're a Seminole fan, you probably don't care as much. But that's basically it. So nothing much.
He's pretty much shot to the top of some people's draft boards.
Yeah, when I learned. I'm starting to learn more and more. What you think is logic is not. And what NFL scouts and what even some coaches are looking for. And I learned this actually with Jeff Sims in high school. And a lot of college coaches don't really care about your stats or your record as much as they care about your arm talent, your ability to basically throw different passes, your ability to throw the deep ball, and can you be coached? And I'm learning that that's really what's happening here with Anthony Richardson. And if you go back a couple drafts, remember Josh Allen was the darling of the draft, and he played at Wyoming. They barely won anything. He was below, I think he was like a 53% completion rating, nothing very sexy. And then when he played against the big schools, he completely disappeared. Like I think one of the games he had like 130 yards or something passing, which isn't optimal. But he had a live arm. He was athletic, and he looked great, and he looked good. So that's really what they're comparing him to is a Josh Allen with a different training table, different meal plan, a little bit better eating in the SEC. So we shall see.
So if you apply everything that you just said to Jordan Travis, explain, because to me, we talked about it years ago when he was the starting quarterback at Florida State, what I thought he needed to do to become a legitimate ACC starter. And now he's well beyond that. In your eyes, James, what is he doing, and what is his arm talent and the type of throws that he can make today that he couldn't make 2 or 3 years ago?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. I'm out there just looking, it all looks the same. I will say this: there are 3 other quarterbacks, and when he's throwing it, it's a rocket. It looks a lot different. I think, when they talk about arm talent, they're really just talking about now. If you look at Patrick Mahomes, not saying anybody's Patrick Mahomes, but like Pat Mahomes can make any throw at any angle on the field. That's arm. That is like if he's the apex of arm talent. So like he can be running to the right, see Travis Kelce 20 yards to the field all the way to the left, moving to the right. He can throw the ball on a line across his body on the other side of the field, and nobody and accurate enough to where it should only get to his guy. That's the apex. Most people can't do that. But when you're looking at a guy who could drop back on a 5 or a 7 step drop He can throw the out route. He on time across like on the wider side of the field. Be able to get it to where it's just him or us or nobody ball. It is able to thread because that's really the difference between the NFL for guys who've never played. Even if you just played it on Madden, it's literally you got to throw guys open. And a guy who's wide open in college, typically, like if somebody's wide open in the NFL, is a true blown coverage. Typically, there's literally the wide open is a matter of inches, and arm talent means you got to zip it in there. And when you don't have it, you have to have elite intellect, and that's what Drew Brees and Tom Brady had was elite level intellect, to where Tom Brady was so good at throwing people open that he didn't have to have the youthful attributes. But you obviously don't want your rookie quarterback coming in and having the athleticism of a 45-year-old quarterback. You would like them to be able to come in with some tools. So I think that's kind of what they're looking at when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Bucks they're looking at a quarterback situation where they need to find someone, and we've been covering it. And Anthony Richardson has been popping up on all these mock drafts, and just depends. You've got Kyle Trask that has been in the system for a little while now, was behind Brady and Gabbert, and now there's a lot of talk with this new Seahawks guy coming over. He had his introductory press conference today. Like, what are the plans moving forward? And they talked a lot about Kyle Trask, and maybe they're going to give him the opportunity, give him the keys, and let him learn this upcoming season. But when going to the camp, it wasn't so pretty for Kyle Trask. And that's just not because we cover Florida State nonstop over here. It's just because learning the system, and it took a little while for him to do the same thing at Florida. And I'm wondering if he'll take the same amount of time to do that here in Tampa, or down there in Tampa once I get down there in a few weeks. So I'm interested. There's definitely, I think it's a good question you brought up, Mark, and that's something we should jump on to sometime this offseason, of the difference between Jordan Travis and Anthony Richardson, because they have a lot of different threats that they bring to defenses, but we don't really specify kind of like their capabilities that make them different from one another. So that's a really good discussion that I think we should jump into this offseason, because, Jordan Travis coming back for another year. I think Anthony Richardson could have done the same thing, but maybe it's not the right situation, right timing with Billy Napier being down there and kind of going into year 2. So he felt like this was the best situation for him going against the other quarterbacks in the draft. So it's a good discussion. It's a good topic you brought up.
Logan, you inspired me today. I saw your tweet about the Florida State LSU FanDuel betting lines were out. They're just selected games, maybe about 20 games this year. So then I checked it out, saw, there's about 20 games on there. That's something to talk about. Boom, popped on live, ran down the betting lines for about a half hour. So really good stuff. Obviously, Florida State beats LSU by 1 point in 2022. And looks like the sports books are looking for pretty much the same game in Orlando.
Feels really similar, doesn't it? I mean, Florida State only being favored by a point. I just put that 50-50, and that's kind of what I think, and James will probably agree, that's kind of what we were expecting going into going down to Orlando. I think Florida State definitely has the advantage, and they also had an advantage too with having a big crowd coming over there to New Orleans and packing out the Superdome over there. But you have the advantage of already, and LSU has done this too, but you have the same plan that you had going down for your Cheez-It Bowl experience against Oklahoma. It's not going to be too far long away from that, to where you're going back down there. They kind of already know the practice schedule. A lot of these guys have already been in the system with Mike Norvell anyways. That gives you an advantage over Brian Kelly. And Brian Kelly is a damn good coach. And that's why you instantly think, yeah, that this is going to be a battle no matter what. But being favored by 1, it probably seems right at this time. I thought maybe it'd be a little bit more in the advantage of Florida State's side, but it's so early. We're in February. We're getting close to March Madness now, but it makes sense, but it kind of gives you a little kind of feel before you head into spring and what we'll be hearing from and seeing during Florida State's camp coming up in a few weeks, and then also hearing what's going down in Louisiana, because this is not like last year where Florida State had a game before week 1. Florida State will be kicking off its 2023 season down there in Orlando. So a lot of question marks, a lot of different things, and there'll be a different kind of coaching style I think Mike Norvell will bring into this game than what we saw this last year. And we talked about it kind of, Mark, when we were doing some of the spring position group previews. You know, just understanding who fits where best. A lot of new additions. I'm already immediately thinking, where are you putting Jaheim Bell? How are you going to use Kyle Morlock to also fit alongside Marquise Douglas, who improved and showed us that he can ball. There's a lot of things that I think will be exciting to talk about and preview this game, and also go through fall camp, looking down and seeing what Louisiana is going to be doing with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think it's, again, you saw the battle. You see another year of Brian Kelly being the coach. I think LSU lost some key weapons, but even in that game, some of the guys, and I don't compare the last year's game to this year's game, but with those weapons, because a lot of those guys didn't stand out in that game in particular. They became more of a focal piece that helped LSU become the champions of the SEC West this year that they were. But I do know Mike Norvell, after the Clemson loss, became, and Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins. I don't want to get into a Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid thing here. Like, they were both critical in really changing the offense. You saw Mike Norvell go from a little bit more conservative, playing his cards to where the offense just exploded the last part of the season. If Mike Norvell if they're coming in calling the offense in that same manner, this is a completely different FSU team, and a team that doesn't let off the gas quite like they did against LSU. I mean, Florida State started off on fire, then really took a lull, and then in the first half of the season, that second quarter and the beginning of that third quarter was what was killing Florida State. Then to cut it back on, and I would always argue with people that this game is a blowout. Well, not a blowout, but a relatively not close game if Florida State doesn't fumble that ball, getting cute. And I don't think they get cute, feeling like you have to go Wildcat. I think with Trey Benson as your starting running back, even if you took DJ Lundy out and you put a Jaheim Bell in there, you ran basically a two-back system like that, or you use Jaheim Bell as your Wildcat guy, because he's got experience playing running back at South Carolina. He was like a Swiss Army knife. But I think the play action is set up for you to be able to go three tight ends, one wide receiver, and there's a multitude of different things you could do in your goal line package that we haven't seen Florida State be able to do in quite some time. So I'm going to take the 1 point, gladly. If I'm not a gambling man, but if they would let me, add a little bit more and go ahead and just, say I would take it, I'll get Florida State +5 because I think it's a touchdown game. I would go, if I could win a little bit more money, I'd be willing to gamble on it. But that's also the homer in me. That's not saying that LSU is not a good team. It's just suggesting that I think Mike Norvell is growing as a coach, and that Florida State team grew up as a coach too. Because Brian Kelly is one of 5 active NCAA coaches that have over 200 wins. So I mean, he's a very good coach, man. He did a really good job in Notre Dame. He's doing a good job at LSU. I just think Florida State's in a different place right now.
Yeah, if you look at the line on this game versus what it was last year, I think FSU was a 3-point dog, and it was pretty much a road game, and then it turns out to be a last possession game. But to James' point, if FSU takes care of the ball inside the 2-yard line, doesn't get fancy, they go in for a 2 touchdown lead there in the last couple minutes of the game. But as it turned out, obviously, it comes down to an extra point. It's a 1-point game, but the only thing different this year is where both of these teams went into this game and these programs as being big question mark wild card kind of teams where people knew they had talent in spots, but how really good are these two teams coming off 6-7 and 5-7 the year before? It looks like a 1-point difference again, maybe, but it's they're both have elevated considerably in terms of what's expected. And shoot, Florida State might be a top 5 team in the country entering the season. They'll certainly be in the top 10. Not that we trust AP voters, because they miss about half the teams in the top 25 by the end of the season. So I've never been sold on the AP vote, but it is what it is, and people look at it.
Yeah, this will be a better, and we got to be honest, this will be a better LSU team than Florida State faced last year, but it's also got to look at Florida State's side and the additions that they've added too, and it will be a better team. It's just going to depend on who coaches a better game and which players have done enough film work and understand their assignments. And I think Florida State, just looking ahead early at it, we'll know more on the FSU side because we cover the team, and we'll get some word and some scoop here and there from LSU's camps. And, Brian Kelly, from what we learned last year, a little bit more tied in with some things, and some things will be told, some will not be told. But we know who their quarterback will be. We've got that answered already. But now seeing some of their younger players like Will Campbell, their tackle that was going against Jared Verse, he had a season under his belt now to have the experience, and he's going to be going against, though, a Jared Verse who is once again staying again and have another year to improve. There's different really fun storylines that we'll look into this throughout a couple months once we're past spring to start preparing for that Florida State versus LSU matchup, because like you said, Mark, this will be a top 10 matchup. It should be in college football to kick off the season, and one of the most attractive games to start off the year in college football. But there's so many just different things and intricacies between Florida State's team and LSU's that will be fun to cover. But a minus one favorite isn't too bad, a point favorite. So we'll see.
LSU's most accomplished wide receiver left for the NFL draft, Keyshawn Boutte. Malik Neighbors was their returning leading receiver at 72 catches, 1,000 yards. He just got hit with a weapons charge, so we will see how that plays out over the offseason there.
Yeah, that one hurts, but he'll miss the first quarter of that FSU game.
Yeah, I would expect it to be pretty light,
if that.
Well, we'll see what else is involved. Yeah, it's a long ways away at this point. This didn't come up in August, so there's time to get things cleared up there one way or the other. The other point spread that came out was, of course, the trip to Death Valley as a 3-point dog. And of course, there's going to be a lot of football played, so that line's going to go all over the place. But if these two teams are what we expect them to be, that's basically a pick'em game, or if anything, it's a pick'em game at a neutral site, is what Vegas is telling us. So they're hopping on the Florida State bandwagon as well in terms of challenging Clemson, at least challenging Clemson, maybe being the ACC champion by that point spread.
Yeah, they are jumping on the FSU side, and I can understand it. Florida State's a brand that brings a lot of conversation, and that's because one part of the fan base is very vocal, and we know that right off the bat, and been waiting for this turn for Florida State to be able to compete, and they've shown us that they've been able to do that with Clemson. They showed us 2 years ago when they went to Death Valley and battled there. I really liked the way that they went there, played. There was still things that Mike Norvell had to work on, and there was some mental mistakes that hurt them in that game that costed them. But Florida State now having these favorites, definitely if you're going to having that ACC championship opportunity and being favored to beat I don't call them rival, but they're practically your rival in the conference. Definitely, I think it creates a good conversation in the ACC now, where Florida State can battle with Clemson, and it's kind of been the other way around for now. Whenever you're like national outlets are talking about the conference, it's immediate Clemson. But now being able to add Florida State in here to have a conversation of being able to win the ACC is huge. It's a little bit different, something that we haven't been used to in a while, and it just goes to show what Florida State's been able to do developing wise. And I think too, the biggest question mark from a lot of these reporters this offseason is going to go back to that 3-game losing streak, and if they can beat teams that are ranked, and that's fine, I think. But I think it's also important to look at the turnaround that Florida State did after those games and learning from them, and then also the attitude that these players brought, because they really think that they blew it on their end. You think, they look back at tape, they looked back at their mistakes they made. They felt like they shouldn't have lost 3 of those games because they were close ones, but they really do think they made mistakes to cause that. It wasn't because of the opponent was better than them. And that's a mentality we haven't seen from a Florida State team in a while, and it's taken Mike Norvell a while to build that. But to have these early favorites is something interesting to me. But I'm more curious of how Mike Norvell is going to work the mentality of this team now not really having the chip on your shoulder as much as you still kind of do, because you're expected to win the ACC. You're expected to make it to these New Year's Six Bowls. You're expected now reach the playoffs, but I'm wondering how these players feel now that they've, I guess, made it. I guess getting those 10 wins. I'm just curious to see if that changes anything and their attitudes and how they play on the field with one another. But from what we've seen, though, internally, the future is bright. Just I would say culture-wise in that regard.
Yeah, I would just say a lot of the reason why you're getting those early predictions with Florida State with Clemson is because of Clemson. It has very little to do with Florida State. You've got Clemson that's losing a lot. They also haven't been the same Clemson as far as the recruiting and the development as they were, I'm not saying consistently, but the last 2 years. I personally believe when I'm looking at this Clemson roster, offensively, they used to have guys that kind of made a DC lose sleep. Now, you do have Will Shipley, but you have a new offense that's coming in with a different type of quarterback who wants to throw the ball down the field. DJ, as I call him, I don't know how to say his last name, but DJ Ukulele is a dual threat quarterback. And with that comes a different type of respect that you have to have. Right now, teams it's not that they're going to purposely disrespect Klubnik. They just don't care that his legs, that if he has legs or not, they're more concerned about his arm. So what they're going to do is they're going to say what this kid is going to have to do is beat us. He's going to have to beat us with his arm, and that's not going to. I don't think he has the capabilities to do that. Do it with his legs and make them have to. And that's how Will Shipley was getting these holes and these seams to be able to really gash us. I also think now what their defense is, they got Tyler Davis, Xavier Thomas, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Nate Wiggins. Those are some key guys that they have on each level. But I think this year, Jordan Travis is, and we talked about a little bit with Anthony Richardson, the difference. Jordan Travis is in a situation where he could actually argue or make a really big name for himself to be top 5 quarterback. Legitimate. Like, he's not going to be number 1 overall like Ant, but he has a legitimate argument to say, hey, some team needs to come and get me. But it's not just with his arms and his arm and his intellect. He has got to use his legs. And I was just watching the highlight of one of the first plays in the Clemson game. Man uses his legs. I remember Peter Ward saw him in the tunnel and said, hey, man, we need you to use your legs. He used his legs more against North Carolina State, we probably win. Uses his legs more against Wake Forest, we probably win. He uses his legs against Clemson more, and now you're having to, just like I talked about with DJ, you're having to account. And with losing Trayshawn Ward was your back that had the vision and the patience. You don't have that anymore. You got a guy that's going to just ram it in there, like Trey Benson. And if it's a hole and you flinch, he's gone. But that's also not the most conducive thing in the world. But how do you generate and create holes with guys like that? You have a quarterback that's a threat to the run, that's going to make the linebacker have to sit, that's going to make that defensive end have to be honest. And there were times when I think he was so afraid of being known as a mobile quarterback that he kind of, shied away from that. But I think, if Mike needs me to go and plead with him and tell him that, this is what you're going to do, I have no problem doing it. But I think that's also the biggest key to Florida State going 11-1 and 12-0 is how healthy and how confident Jay Trav is in his total package.
Our buddy Chris at Spear Addicts is hitting us all 3 with questions. He is lined up. He's organized here. He's got James first with how do you feel about the offensive line for 2023?
I think for the first, last year we were able to get some depth, but we lost a couple guys early, but the depth helped us not have very many drop-offs. I think they went back to the cupboard of what works. They got 2 really, really good prep guys. You went and got the young man from Colorado, who I believe can step into the role that we just lost here at guard with a guy, big man, big heart. But I'm not saying he'll be as dominant, but he's somebody, a big body that you could put in there. You got Robert Scott, who should be, again, he's a guy who's looking at if he has a decent year, he's going to hear his name called in the NFL draft in 2024. At center, your center finally was able to keep his weight. And so now he's going to come in with 3 years of experience. Which your center is basically the quarterback of the offensive line. And if you're able to maintain those 5 guys, one thing that Florida State has not had probably since Stork and them boys when they won the Natty is a consistent five. Somebody's hurt, somebody's going down. I remember in I think it was 2021, they talked about Florida State. We played 13 games, and Florida State had 13 different offensive line starting units. So like that's just there's no consistency that can be had with that. But depth produces competition. I think the depth, what they did across the offensive line and defensive line the last few years, should make for a very spirited spring practice. And when you're going up against the best every week, you come in more confident of what you're going to go up and go and see when you go face somebody else. So they've done such a good job that now I believe even if Atkins is gone, the development will always be there. The guys will still be there, and now you're just enhancing as opposed to trying to overall edit your roster.
Mm-hmm.
Logan, Chris is looking for who you're excited to see this spring and on into the fall in 23.
Most excited to see, so this can be any player, no matter what rank, starter, whichever. Who I'm most excited for, I'm probably going to go with Jaheim Bell with the mixture of how Mike Norvell is going to use him. I think that's something that all of us, once we get to practices, once I see James, once he gets back over here in the 850, and we're watching practices, seeing how he's going to utilize Bell, kind of like I was bringing up earlier, because they're going to have I really like this tight end room now. I haven't been able to say that in a while, where I'm excited to talk about a Florida State tight end room now with Kyle Morlock, Marquiston Douglas, and Jaheim Bell in there. And you've got some younger guys also like Brian Courtney. Like, there's a lot to like in this room. And then also a redshirt freshman, Jarrell Powers, who I was talking about last night with you, Mark. A true freshman this last year, will be a redshirt freshman, has the size, looks the part. I was making some big time moves there, and during the bowl game practices, I liked seeing the improvement there from him. So I like Jaheim Bell here, and probably the person that I'm most excited for. Last year, this was Jared Verse. He was the number one. I was, really stoked to see him and see him battle against Florida State's offensive line, Alex Atkins. But this time I'm going offensive player, and it's going to be Jaheim Bell. And there's a reason why he ended up picking Florida State. There's a reason why he picked Mike Norvell. There's a reason why he picked their offense to play for to end off his career. That's a special athlete, a lot of capabilities, a lot of different ways you can use them. I'm just really key on like where are you putting him at? That's a thing. You can put him outside, you can put him in the slot, you can put him on the line, you can put him in the backfield. That's just what Bell brings to your offense. So that should excite anybody that likes watching football, college football, or definitely if you're an FSU fan, Jaheim Bell. It's probably my player that excites me the most going into this spring camp.
Chris, before I answer your question, because I think you're just trying to get me to nail that prediction so you can win some money. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to James, and also because I want to extend on this second question for Logan, because Logan, you pretty much covered what I'm going to ask. But if you want to throw another guy out there too, James, who's on the roster that really hasn't done anything yet, who hasn't really produced on the field, but you think could take off?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. That's one of those questions that if somebody watches it, hey, man, you think I ain't doing nothing?
I know, right? That's the thing.
I don't go sit in the baseball stands and watch these practices, Mark. I'm really up close. I'm up close personal with these guys, man.
But, I mean, if they've got the ball and they're catching and they see you, maybe we just go fall down right in your legs there and snap.
Yeah, like I'm over there on the sideline.
Positive way, they're gonna.
I'm on the sideline. They're not gonna pull up when they're running out of bounds now. Nah,
that doesn't necessarily mean that they were bad last year.
Yeah.
They didn't get an opportunity.
I think Turner, at defensive end, Turner from out of Seminoles, really good defensive. Got the size, got the attributes there. Just trying to find a way to fit in. If I were trying to light a fire under somebody, I would say number 9, he knows who he is. And, you've done something, but you ain't done nothing at the same time. Like, it's the reason why everybody's talking about Patrick Payton and they're talking about Jared Verse. Derek got to come in and, make people know who you are. I think that's where you get back to that Florida State. The Florida State that I grew up watching, when you had guys like Raynard Wilson, I just saw he had a great space the other day. I can't think of it. He was the highest drafted player in Florida State history, defensive end. Andre Wadsworth.
Andre
Wadsworth. Oh
Andre,
yeah.
Peter Bulware. You had you had like 5 or 6 cats. You had Corey. Like I always remind people that Senator Corey Simon was a backup when he was a consensus All-American. That's how deep they were at Florida State during those times. So you got to do that. I would say you got that Old Testament Azariah Thomas. Kid, they like to pout a little bit as freshmen, but you ain't did shit. You're a freshman. Go make some plays, go do something, then force the hand. Offensively, I would go and say the most talented player in the wide receiver core. FSU's fans, probably their only way of really knowing who he is seeing him get into it with Mike Norvell, and that's transferring Deuce Spann, and he's a tall, big wide receiver. That's a legit 4.3 kid. I think if and then when you see like Malik McClain, if I remember correctly, that's the one who just left. You come in and you see him possibly taking on his role. You can see him really elevate this offense by giving us a guy what they call cut the head off the top of the defense. Like really force those safeties to be honest, have to stay in your zone coverage. Because if you play man with a kid like this, he's going to torch you. He's going to put somebody in a bad spot.
Yep.
So that would be the only, because everybody else on offense. I mean, I can say Biscuit, but I think in Douglas, but I mean, I think. I like him. I think fans are going to fall in love with him. I actually think, Jaheim Bell's going to come in and leave the impact that he's going to leave. But I think everybody's thinking Murlock is going to come in and just be a out of sight automatic starter. And I think Biscuit's going to hold down his starting job a little bit better than what people are. And I don't say they're not disrespecting him on purpose. I just think fans don't know any better. Every kid that transfers from Florida State is a quitter. Every kid that transfers into Florida State is the greatest person to ever play the game. Like, how could the other school allow this kid to leave? But the beautiful thing that we haven't had in quite some time, and with Mike Norvell, I hope he doesn't do it now. Maybe when they change the rules for transfer portal, or when he retires, he'll be able to write a book on how to build your team in the portal. Because the one thing that they have now is talent across the board, and what they look like they're recruiting is going to make them not have to rely as heavy on the portal and just get 2 or 3 of the best guys in the portal while they're getting some of the best high school seniors. It should be a fun spring. I can't wait. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get to Tallahassee on March 6th for the first practice, because I'll be basically leaving Indianapolis to come right to Tallahassee. So, but I'm hoping I'll put the same tweet that I put out last year, that this is the best first day of spring that I've seen, and everybody, and it'll go viral, and everybody will be like, yeah, eat it up.
Yeah, I like those. I like those picks. The Byron Turner one is spot on. We saw a lot of improvement from him in the middle of the season all the way to the end, and if he puts on a little bit of size, that's going to be a huge factor for him. And then, like you said, I like Marquise. And one thing about him, the difference between him and Cam McDonald, reliability. He caught the ball. I think a lot of things we forgot. Marquise and Douglas can catch the ball and he can run with it. It's not as slim as maybe Cam McDonald was, but he can catch the ball. And if he's reliable, that's what a quarterback wants. And so if Marquise, and I don't think Marquisen's going to be stepping down and let anybody take a spot whatsoever. I don't think that's going to be the game plan. I think Florida State's going to try to utilize all 3 of them as much as possible. But Florida State should have a fun spring camp, at least definitely offensively, because that was some of the going into the spring. The offense was there was a lot of question marks because you were bringing in these wide receivers that just transferred over, and you're going to try to see what you're going to get out of a guy like Deuce Spann. We were wondering, what was going on with Winston Wright Jr., Micah Pittman. We just thought Johnny Wilson was really tall, and you're just going to throw it to him in the end zone. That was it. But hell no, that's not the case. You can throw it to him anywhere across the field. So I think there's going to be major question marks on Winston Wright Jr., the availability for him. And like you were bringing up, James Deuce Spann, can he be utilized in any way, shape, or form outside of, I want to see him used in special teams. There was a question on here talking about who's going to be returning kicks this year. I want to see Deuce Spann back there because we get to see him in practice. He's one of the returners. He doesn't get a lot of starting time back there, but he has the speed. Like James said, the size. We get to see him up close. he's got all those crazy athletic attributes. It's just taking a little bit more extra coaching because he's gone from a quarterback position over to the wide receiver room. And, you see that he wants to be coached, and you saw the thing that went viral this year where Coach Norvell was going off on him for a little bit and then sat with him for a second, and then he ends up being on the field the next play and makes a grab. Like, that's just kind of how Mike Norvell is going to work things no matter what. And I think it works perfectly for a guy like Deuce Spann, who's just taking a little bit longer to get under the system, understand where he needs to be and routes and building chemistry with his quarterbacks. So I would like to see Deuce Spann make that next jump, because he made a big one in that fall camp, and I think we all were expecting to see more out of him this last year. But that wide receiver room was ridiculously stacked. And Ontario Wilson held on to his own as a veteran and didn't allow any of these transfers to come in here and take his place. So we'll see. Deuce Spann, Winston Wright Jr. Will Deuce make that next step? And will we see Winston Wright Jr. play a football game in 2023 is probably one of the big question marks on offense for me right now.
8 catches for Deuce last year at Florida State. Winston Wright, 63 for West Virginia. Obviously, we expected a lot out of him, and unfortunately, now he's battling his way back, but seems to be in really good shape. James, before I answer Chris's question, did you pout as a freshman?
No. It was a lot different. I was raised way differently than a lot of people. My mom didn't even know I was good in football until they tried to, like, my freshman year, in high school. I got an F. I passed, but I got an F in I think earth science or something like that. So I passed with a C. And my mom was like, "You're not playing any sports," and the coaches had to beg her to let me play. And she was like, I know they say his name a lot. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I try to, like, complain to my grandmother, and my grandmother isn't one of those good church Southern grandmothers. She's very tough, hard nosed, and she'll tell me to stop being a punk, be tough, stop crying about it, go out there and do something to make people want to play you. And that was the mentality that I took in there. And as a guy who actually, even though I was offered and I didn't make the grades, I walked on. So there was no room for me to cry and pout. If I cried and pout, I was going back to Rockbrook, 1033 apartment C. And in my mind, I said, I am not going back to that apartment. There's no way in hell I'm going back to that. So it's funny because Coach Bowden, I was going through my phone and I saw an interview with Coach Bowden, and Coach Bowden was like, I don't ever remember James complaining. He just went out there and did what he had to do. He also said I wasn't no sissy either, so which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, man, it was but I saw people pop. I saw and he ended up working out for him. Thomas Clayton was a 4-star running back for Virginia, but he came in with Lorenzo Booker, who's the number 1 prospect in the nation. Leon Washington, the number 1 athlete in the nation. Thomas Clayton, I had Torrance Washington, who was a freshman in front of me. So it was 5 guys that were brought in there, and it was like who's gonna play. And Tom ended up leaving to go to Kansas State. Ended up being drafted. I believe he played with the 49ers for a few years. And I seen guys like Fred Rouse pout. I seen it happen. But when you're on a team where it's a bunch of alpha males and dogs, like, that crying stuff doesn't fly. But good camaraderie and brotherhood will come up and tell you, hey man, stop crying. Come on, let's pull this together. And I think they're getting that now, but I think it's still they got to get some guys still can't buy into that. So they had to leave and do what was best for them, and congrats to those guys.
I figured you being you and you not being a 4-star coming in and having to work for everything you got, that you weren't pouting. I just wanted to hear what you were going to say.
Yeah, my mama wasn't playing that. She'd have probably spanked me.
All right. Chris has for me, how many wins does FSU get this year? Well, let's see, Chris. On the plus side, I nailed it at 5-7 2 years ago, but I was way short this past year at 6-6. So 1 good prediction out of me for Florida State, 1 bad one. I was looking at the numbers a few weeks ago because out of the predictions I made last year, 65 in the Power 5, 40 some I got within a game. So that's not too bad. So for the first time since 2016, I will say, nobody on this schedule that Florida State can't beat, or you could argue shouldn't beat. We know the obvious two teams that they're going to have a tough game with, most likely. And then we talked about it a couple of weeks ago in terms of who we thought could jump up and give them a game. And I think the most capable team outside of the big two is Pitt. Who knows about Miami? They're a wild card. I don't know what to expect out of them, but I just, they got a top 15 roster. That's what the metrics tell us. But I don't know that there wasn't a team that was more of a mess on the field compared to their talent than Miami. And then obviously Duke is playing out of its mind. Last year they did compared to what they should be. So I think it's those two, and it's Pitt. And I think Florida State wins 2 out of the 3. Right now, why not go 11-1?
I think there's a good perk too. I'm overlooking it, but now it's just drenched in my head. Duke. I'm not going to look over Duke this year. I will not do that. If I'm doing tiers,
it's crazy.
Yep. I know we keep overlooking. I'm like, okay, we got to add Duke in there in our brains. It's not basketball. It's not Leonard Hamilton going over there. I mean, right now it wouldn't be close of a game. Sadly, a rest in peace to our basketball squad there. But Florida State on the football side of things, I think they're going to have a nice test at home. At least they have them at home. If I'm putting them in tiers, I've got LSU, Clemson there in that top tier, and then I'm adding, like you were just talking about, Mark, Pittsburgh, Duke in that second tier, where you're going to have, you're still going to have to play a good game in order to get out of and win. Some Florida State has had to learn the last couple of years to be able to win and go on the road like they did against Louisville. But I think Duke's going to bring a pretty good competitive team to Florida State this year that they haven't seen ever. So, maybe back going to Florida State's ACC championship game against them in 2013. They've got a coach that knows what he's doing. They've got a young quarterback also that's going to go into his second year. They have a lot of high hopes for him. So I would keep an eye a little bit on Duke here for maybe adding into that second tier. That could also be a good show that we do Jason would be salivating. Any kind of schedule talk that we can talk about here, any kind of add in Miami for 30 or 45 minutes in there and then end off the rest of 15 would just be incredible for him. So maybe we can do that this off. And I'll actually put my PTO in. I won't be here for that one, but at least Jason can hold it down for 45 minutes on the schedule talk.
I thought I liked to talk about schedules, but it could be like the second week of August camp when we got all sorts of stuff going on. We're talking about, and Jason's talking about games in November. It's like, hang on.
Oh no, I'm not there. I'm not there yet. I just didn't know that there was multiple ways to talk about a schedule. Maybe there's like 2 or 3 ways you could do a spider web outside of the schedule, but he's given me creative ways for extra content to have. There is a lot of ways you can talk about a schedule for months on end. So
good stuff. And of course, no divisions and the big 3-5-5 model for the first time in the ACC for everybody, including FSU. We should probably, at some point when we've got time, maybe we got time tonight, we'll throw up my college football coaches rankings, and you guys can tear me apart for where I ranked Big Mike.
Ooh, yeah, no, is it going to be something where we no longer come on the show, we end off on 200, call it a day?
200 was solid.
I hope it's not going to be that severe. All right, let me find it. Here we go.
James, you got to come down for that first spring practice again.
I'm coming. I was being a punk. I'm probably gonna come. Like, it's just I got to go to Houston for some 7-on-7 thing.
Yeah.
For some group I'm with, and then but I'm not going. I'm gonna come. I'll be there on that Monday, and then on that Friday practice. Hopefully they're banging on Friday. I think I gotta go look at the schedule again.
Hopefully. That's really after like the first one. After that, you're just kind of like, all right, why am I still here until they put the pads on?
Yeah, everybody looks good in shorts.
Some people don't understand that, but at least from people playing football, you understand pads different. Like, some guys look incredible, and then you put on the pads. Wide receivers don't run the same type of routes. They're getting covered up more. 22
out of 65 in the Power 5, or out of 69 it is now in the Power 5 with the other teams coming on board in the Big 12.
Can you scroll up? Let me see that. Let me see your top 10.
All right, here we go from the top.
Yeah, I'm not saying Mike's top 10, by the way. I just want to see who we have in.
And this is not a resume ranking like you know your whole resume for your career. This is what I think right this second. And you got to take the resume into account. Obviously, if a dude has one bad season, you don't just knock him all the way down the rungs.
I'm putting, at least from what Mike Norvell, I always think of PJ Fleck because that was also a name that was brought up and being hired at FSU. I think Mike Norvell battles PJ Fleck pretty heavily there, at least in my opinion. I mean, great coach. I mean, they're both great coaches. I think just from what, I guess it depends too on what situations, and I know you're not looking so crazily deep into it, but just the situations that each of these players.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to look crazy deep into it because this is probably the toughest sport to rank coaches because they have such different levels of facilities, resources, money, recruiting opportunities. You know, you're trying to recruit players to Minnesota. They don't have any players up there.
If you got up at 22, right?
Yeah.
You'll scroll down a little bit more on that.
Yeah, it's got a page break that kills us there.
Well, that's
if it's
so. I got 7. I would put them at top 15. I have 7 coaches that you have ranked ahead of them without even seeing who 21 is.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I have 8 coaches that you have ranked ahead of them.
Yep.
So I guess I'll put them at 14. You know, I would rank James Franklin. Arguably, I would rank him higher. But he hasn't won a natty. Kyle Whittingham, I think you have him. I'll give him that kind of those props considering he's at Utah. Yeah. And you know, it's not like as I just joked about on my show with Shaq and Charles Barkley talking about Salt Lake, like how boring it is. Like those people should automatically go to heaven for just having to live there. But I look at like Mark Stoops. All things being considered, Mark Stoops has SEC money, everything that's there for him, and he hasn't done anything there. Mac Brown finally turned the corner, and Mike Brown one thing he's consistently done is lose to Mike Norvell, even at his worst. I give you Brian Kelly for beating Nick Saban, but I think that beating a number 5 coach should probably bump you up a couple spots too. So I would say Mike is top 15. Based upon just what this list of who you have in front of them. But other than that, I mean, and it was somebody else up there. I think Sonny Dykes should probably be a little bit higher, considering what he just did with TCU. Could be an aberration, could not. And then Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is the king of starting off, having the spark when he starts, but then it falls into garbage. And I just don't understand that, how he's so good at Ole Miss for like so many consecutive weeks, and then it just tapers off. But,
out of nowhere. Yeah, I'd put him in 10 to 15 rank, at least off of yours right here, Mark. I mean, I'm putting him around that PJ Fleck type area. Same for Sam Pittman too. I think it's in that area range.
Okay. I think you guys do understand that it's almost like ranking teams during the season. You get to about 10 or 15, and that Lane Kiffin at 10. Actually, when I produced the video, I dropped him to 14. But anyway, you get to that 12 to 15 range, and you can go from about 12 to about 35 or 40, and there's about that much space between them. Like it's
not easy. That's why you do this and we don't do this. We just focus on one coach, one team, one quarterback, but you're over here dialing in all of this.
There's only one person who I think does list Twitter. And the crazy thing is, Mark, you're doing that from the genuineness of your heart and the love of the game. You're not like my guy, Big Game Boomer, who he's the king of the list and he has this thing figured out. He knows if I'm going to put somebody in here and it's going to ruffle some feathers, it's going to get traction and retweets.
Oh, yeah.
And I just looked at his follower count when he first came on the scene.
Yeah.
I just remember it being like, last time I looked, it was like 5,000. This guy's got like 45,000 followers now.
I
I
know.
was like, it's great.
I've
He's
had him on a
parlayed.
few times, and yeah, he knows just to make it legitimate enough, but to poke some fan bases. See, mine's authentic. Mine's just, I say this all the time when people either accuse me of like trying to please everybody, or some people like, oh, you were just trying to piss somebody off there. I'm like, I'm doing neither. So sometimes it's like really boring because it's like, yeah, I'm not going to make anybody mad, but if that's what I think it is, then that's what I think it is. And then other times I'll piss some people off because I'm not going to do just whatever everybody else does. So it's always just exactly what I think it is.
Where was Manny Cristobal rank? I mean, Mario
30,
Cristobal.
Manny Cristobal.
33.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
It's good.
He still could get it together. Like, I'm not, you know.
I'm not going to
see what happens.
hammer the guy
right?
for one season, but
You
that
don't want to do
that season was, man, I get into this conversation with and debate with the guys over on the Miami channel, and I'm like, I understand your defense of him is that he's coming in and just tearing everything down to the foundation and building it back up, but do you really, when you inherit a top 15 roster, do you have to just be god awful? Like you can't do anything with that? Like while you're building?
The conversations this time last year where and it's best quarterback in the state, best wide receiver core in the state, best running back room in the state, best offensive line coach, best offensive line in the state, best secondary. Like when you're literally like, this is what the fan base was saying, but then once games, as we used to love to say, games got to get played. Once games got played, it was we got to build it. Manny had some of these bad guys in. We got to get rid of these people, and now you need to rebuild it. Before it was we're winning. I mean, when they were retweeting they're the college playoff dark horse. I just want the consistency, and that's it. If now they're rebuilding, then fine. That's what we're gonna give you now. But like, I just feel bad for the players because they're going to be, I think they're on the fourth OC in 4 years. Some of these guys, they're on the third DC. And these DCs and these OCs, and one of my friends, Derek Nicholson, he's getting in this situation where, like, yo, you just got there like 2 weeks ago. You got to install and get to develop relationships and recruit. All the while, look for a house, move your family. I mean, I know that's part of the business, but it can't be easy.
Nope.
I'm going to make one other defense for my 22 ranking after I see some comments in the chat. Understand, everybody in the chat, you're a Florida State fan. So just understand you're automatically biased. So to a certain extent, even if you're trying to cut it straight. Number two, also understand, hey, I think I'm on record here for 200 shows that I'm pretty impressed with Mike Norvell, but it's one season. It's one season, and they played really well. They beat some good teams. They didn't really beat too many good teams after LSU. Like, they pretty much beat who they should beat. It was a tremendous season. He inherited crap. He had to totally flip over the roster. He did a lot of awesome things, and he's still in the process. But yeah, if he backs that season up with something similar or better, I think most of us expect better, then yeah, he's going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
He skyrocketed from last year. Like, I didn't have anything to go on last year, except I kind of think this guy's doing some good things there, but it really hasn't shown up on the field. I don't know where I had him last year. I had him in the 40s somewhere.
Yeah, there's no longer an excuse for Mike Norvell of, hey, well, we're still figuring things out. I got to fix the locker room and got to get some more of my players in the room and then the door. You've got your transfers. You've got your recruits now going into your 4 seasons. Got all this talent back. You got your best defender back. You got your best offensive player back, and a lot of really good ass other players on both offense and defense coming back. And you were able to retain them, a lot of help to the NIL side of things. Now, if you prove it, then you can jump into those top 15 rankings and Mark's rankings, the ones that matter the most. Maybe even creep in top 12, maybe. I mean, just depending on what Florida State can do this season. But yeah, it's a lot of you got it now. You got it now, Mike. Prove it on the field, man. So you got to win these ranked games. You can't lose those. And I think he knew that, and I think the team knew it. But no more excuses this time. We as a team, us as people covering the team, you're expected to win these now. So, and that's how it should be.
William, super sticker. Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. William is he has been the sole sponsor for the show tonight.
Appreciate it, William.
There
Good
we
man.
go.
Good man. Make sure you hit that like button too before we get out of here. Make sure you hit the like button, and Mike Norvell will go from number 22 in those rankings to top 15.
That's how we get it. That's how we get it, right? That's how we change it. We can be bought. We can be bought. Your ranking
Exactly.
can be bought.
If we can get Mark some more views, some more likes, some more engagement, then Mike will slowly creep up every year.
James just gave me an idea. I'll release a different list on every channel.
Yeah, there you go. That's what you should do. Make them have to work for it a little bit.
Mario's, he's going to be like number 8 on the Miami channel.
Yeah. Well, you won't make any money from him there.
I'll have Norvell at 50 on the Miami channel.
There you go. Make people happy.
All right, guys. Everybody follow James, follow Logan, and we'll let them tell you where you can find them and what they're up to. James.
Basically, what I need you guys to go to is Did Media Group on YouTube. Really it would be great to get my followers up on Twitter. But
I'm sorry, James. What am I looking up? I'm going to drop the link in the chat.
Did Media Group on YouTube. Right now we're at 1606 with the subscriptions. We got 5 members. We'd love to get that. The subscriptions is most important. The minute we get over the next show if we get over 2,000 subscribers, we will give away $200 live on my show. So all you have to do is pay attention to the show, and you'll drop your Cash App, your Apple Pay, or whatever it is. We'll get that once we get that over 2,000. So we're 400 away. And each time we get 1,000, we'll do a 10% of that giveaway. And we've got memberships. Our memberships range from $3.99 to $100. There's different things that you can do. But when I go to the combine, when I go to the practices, when I go to do some of these different things, only members will be able to get that. So I know how this works. Somebody will screenshot it or screen grab. That's fine. But members in my inside of Den Media Group will get a chance to do all the cool stuff. And that $100 membership, if you're ever out where I'm at, you get all the tailgates. That's the donation of a book bag every month that you're a member. All of those different things. There's a lot of stuff that comes with it. So appreciate you, Mark.
Appreciate you, James. Logan, what's going on?
Nothing crazy. We're doing an offensive preview tonight on the podcast at 8:00 in about an hour on the Knoll Game Day YouTube channel. So hop over there. We're going to go deep into detail of some players to watch out for, some newcomers, some freshmen, obviously transfers too. We'll talk some Jaheim Bell and where we think he's going to be utilized, and Norvell's offense. So a lot of good offensive breakdowns before spring camp begins in less than 2 weeks, which is even crazier to think of that we're already heading. I feel like we just already had the media luncheon not too long ago. So we'll be jumping into some offense breakdown, also some quick hitters of the week. We'll talk about the LSU line, some college football potential changes coming. We'll see if that ends up happening, but nothing too crazy. Just going to jump into some offensive breakdown and actually be able to talk about some football, which I'm excited for. It's kind of been a lull lately. So excited to be on there tonight at 8.
So, William, we still appreciate you. You're still a sponsor, but Ed has taken over as the lead sponsor. He says, I wanted to be the lead sponsor. So, Ed, you are the lead sponsor. Money talks. But, William, thank you so much for your contribution as well. And a programming note tonight that both James and Logan will appreciate. The Miami show has been canceled tonight.
Oh man, tough. What are they going to do? What are they going to do tonight? I mean, just I guess Twitter only, and they're going to go on there and rant.
They've got Spaces.
Oh.
They've utilized and figured out how to monetize Spaces.
They really do. They do Spaces now. I did not know that. I'm obviously following the right people then, because it's not showing up.
Yeah, it's 24 hours. I mean, they have had. I'm like, guys,
24 hours,
dude. They've had multiple ones. It's kind of like one of my favorite quoted movies is Troy. I like good quotes in movies. And when Brad Pitt comes up there and sees Hector in the beginning of it, and he's like, I can't fight you now. Basically, he's like, there's nobody will see me kill you. He's like, so I need people to see. He says, go home, Spartan Prince. I mean, go home, Prince. Drink some wine, make love to your wife. That's what I want to tell these guys. Like, man, go home. You have children. Somebody misses you. Somebody loves you. You're not getting paid to do this. I don't love anything that strongly to where I'm going to stay up outside of my family. That I'm going to stay up 24 hours and keep talking about the same things over and over again. But
what are we doing? Yeah. What? How much more can you talk about it? Yeah. And
Yeah,
we haven't seen any Miami fans anymore.
You guys are going to have to fill me in on the whole Twitter space deal, because I got into an argument with some guy yesterday, and it's so hilarious when people judge their level of weight and value based on how many followers they have. And so he started making fun of how many followers I had, and he's got like 400 and I got like 5,000. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't judge people on that. I don't even care. You could be the greatest person in the world and have one follower. It doesn't matter. But like, I don't even know where you're going with this conversation. But he then told me that he was the Twitter space lord. So
oh God, I hope he doesn't put that on his Tinder. Holy smack! Well,
it's on the profile. Yeah, it's out there. Oh, on the Tinder. Yeah, that's not going to work.
Different guys.
So yeah, that's there. You go.
Lucky to not have to be in that realm. I would say we don't have FSU spaces anymore. Maybe me and James come up with an idea this year, since this will be a good team. Maybe we will revolutionize the FSU side of spaces for some fun. I like kicking it back. We can't cuss on here, but I like cussing a little bit. James does too. So maybe spaces, radar version, get Mark in there too a couple times.
You guys can play it a little looser than you think you can. You know, it's okay. I just don't want like reams being spewed like for minutes. You know, I'm good beyond that.
It's a good punctuation. I use it as punctuation.
Yeah,
I may not tweet with punctuation marks, but I speak with it. So like, it's a good way to make sure. Okay, he meant that one a little bit stronger than the other one. So, but yeah, it's I like to try to keep it somewhat kid friendly. I mean, I cuss in front of my kids, so I don't. That might be why they're messed up. So, but I don't really know. So,
yeah.
Logan, James, we appreciate it. Everybody get back here next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Great episode.